Hello, I'm Damian Smart, and I'm a pre-service teacher at QUT. My tutor is Nerda Spina, and my workshop is 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning. On PECS, I was at a small school in a Year 2 classroom with two classroom teachers job sharing over the week. I enjoyed having two teachers working with me, as I was able to watch both teachers use different strategies on how they ran the classroom through different subjects and through classroom behaviour management. Over this period, I taught math, English, science, and health, and enjoyed being in the classroom and the challenges you face. I enjoyed tackling the challenge of teaching for a full day and learning about the pressures faced by teachers in the field. I chose to use math as my chosen subject area, focusing on division or sharing, as it is called at the Year 2 level. Students were preparing for a summative assessment where they would be tested on arrays, multiplication, and division. I had been teaching the students all the previous lessons leading up to the beginning of this new unit. The key learning intention for this unit is by the end of this unit, students will be able to share numbers equally. This unit is focused on the content descriptor of recognize and represent division as grouping into equal sets and solve simple problems using these representations. As this is the inverse of multiplication, it also had some representation or reference to recognize and represent multiplication as a repeated addition, groups, and arrays, as this is an inverse operation. The key strategies I used over this PECS was a diagnostic assessment piece, which I performed at the beginning of the unit, which was a test that had questions that students had not been taught yet. I then would perform this assessment at the end of the unit before I had a revision lesson to see if my teaching had improved their performance on the diagnostic assessment and if there are any areas I still needed to address that students were struggling on specifically. In the classroom, we also used a math textbook where students completed a section every lesson related to, in this unit, division. So they would do three or four different sections of the book relating to division. At the end of each lesson, they would hand the book in and it was marked. This provided me with daily updates if my lessons were working or there was an area I needed to readdress, and was very helpful for me rethinking the lesson and seeing if students really understood what I was teaching them. The data was also recorded for teacher reference, just in case parents wanted to check up on the kids, as they could be checked as it was graded from 0 to 3. So it was just a quick little run through to show that students are understanding over the period of time that they're working through all their worksheets. The pre-test I asked students to complete was a 5-question test that asked them to share equally 8 circles. They then had to attempt 2 problem-solving questions, which asked them to share the same number in different ways. For the second question, they had to show their understanding by drawing the problem. And finally, they would show 2 other alternate ways to show 24, other than the ones shown before. The most common problem students struggled with in the pre-test was the problem-solving questions. As you can see in both these pre-tests, you can see they are fine with the first question, as most students would successfully enter this question, but struggled with the other questions. As you can see, even in this question, this person, M, has got B, 3B right, but they didn't show their working. So though they understand vaguely what's going on, they don't know how to show their working. This data showed me that I need to explicitly teach how to approach these worded problem-solving questions if students were to improve. This interpretation was my main takeaway from this pretest and influenced my planning. As you can see, this is another one. He gets question 1 right, but is confused by 3A and B. Even though in 3A, he actually shows his planning. It shows that he doesn't understand exactly what the question is because he doesn't know what to write, even though he has found the right answer, counting those counters individually for this question. Over the 4-lesson runtime of this unit, I used multiple strategies to teach students how to share. I initially used a large physical/visual display, such as hula hoops, to symbolize splitting an amount into equal groups. I also used Unifex cubes to help students use their hands to perform the problems. This helps students visualize what they were doing when we moved to the written problems. I also used mini whiteboards in conjunction with cubes and explicitly set out their whiteboards to help them visualize how to share, as you can see in the bottom. I gave students 20 cubes each and a whiteboard. I asked them to set their whiteboard out with a line through the middle. The top would show the total amount, as we can see here. They needed the total amount of cubes they needed in the problem. And below the line, they would split that into however many groups they needed to split the cubes into boxes. For example, I asked the students to share 10 lollies with 5 friends. You would write 10 on the top of the whiteboard, split the bottom up so there is 5 groups, and then split the 10 into 5 groups evenly, which is 2. They did this with the cubes initially, and then progressed to using whiteboard markers and drawing the cubes on there, and then finally adding the numbers as well. So eventually they would have the cubes, they would have squares, like I've shown on the PowerPoint, and then they would write the number 2 for this example question. This strategy was great for giving them an understanding what division or sharing is, and so they can check their answers. As stated in my diagnostic assessment, I found that students struggled with worded problem-solving questions. So I focused on the vocabulary and how to approach worded questions. I explicitly taught important vocabulary and showed students how to do these questions and my thought process when doing these questions. We used the mini whiteboard strategy above, but instead of writing an equation, I would write a worded problem on the board. We worked through many worded problems with the whiteboards, and I was able to see if students were making mistakes when I walked around the classrooms, as I would ask them to hold it up and we could compare, and I would ask students to explain their understanding. I performed the post-test at the end of all the content I needed to cover, so I could use the data I gathered from the post-test to prepare for the revision lesson the following day, which would help them with the assessment. Interpreting the data of the post-test showed me that most students had improved or showed strategies that assisted them to find the correct answer. As you can see, compared to before, they are now showing each strategy. They have put 6 marks in here and then put the number 6, which is the strategy I taught them. And then we also have here, they're successfully able to do this now. And as we can see on M, she has done it. She has completed all the questions and improved from 3 to 5. The focus students I chose showed improvement in the worded questions and questions 4 and 5, where they had to find alternate ways to get 24. Some students still struggled with the worded questions, so I would readdress that in the revision lesson. But this data showed me that I improved students' understanding of sharing equally. As you can see, he is now able to translate this W to the answer. And he has been able to show alternate ways to do it. Here is the post-test findings of the whole class that I performed. Improvements I could make would be to increase the amount of knowledge each question requires the student to show in the pre-test and post-test, asking student to show the answers physically, representationally, and abstract. This system is used when performing a dynamic mathematics assessment. Is a great system for understanding what part of the maths the students are struggling on. It asks students to show that they can do it physically, for example, the Unifex cubes. They can show it by drawing the problem, so showing it in the graphs before. Finally, they can show it just with numbers. Being able to specifically identify the area that would be an important step in tracking students' progress throughout the unit. Teaching-wise, I would spend even more time on practicing problem-solving questions and relating sharing back to arrays and repeated addition, as multiplication is the inverse of division. But overall, I was happy with the approach I took. In future, I would try and find more games that allow students to learn through play, as this year level would enjoy it using more games. I hope you have enjoyed this. Here are my references, and thank you for listening.